Welcome to Fortress of Faith with Tom Wallace, calling North America to repentance and revival.
Welcome back to the Corner of Truth and Courage. You're listening to Fortress of Faith. This is Tom Wallace. Well, bear with me, folks. I've got a bit of a sore throat, bit of a cold that I've been going through. I just got back from a very interesting trip from Europe, but I'm glad to be back in the saddle, so to speak, back in the in the studio. Today we're going to look at the Southern Poverty Law Center. Well, it's in hot water. They're having to eat some of the stuff that they're dishing out on other people. So as we dive into the most polarizing organization in America, the Southern Poverty Law Center, it was founded in 1971 as a civil rights powerhouse that they famously successfully bankrupted the KKK and many of its chapters through its lawsuits. The SPLC started out well. It had a good mission. It was trying to take away the white supremacists out of our country. However, it's been on a mission creep, changing its mission, creeping into another target. Apparently, America was no longer racist. And so they had to look at other things to try to make their money from. And boy, have they made a lot of money fighting hate and racism and so on there. So they've amassed a massive amount of wealth, but they have become a group of hate themselves. The very thing that they were fighting, they have become. And a bombshell occurred in the 2026 federal indictment that they are now considered a partisan smear machine rather than fighters for a holy, righteous cause. So let's break this down. It started off with great success back in 1971, but it shifted from its landmark goal. And its victories was won against violent white supremacist groups all the way up to the 90s. They created what they called the Klan Watch to monitor extremists and extremism. But around November of 2010, things began to change in their culture. As I said, they kind of ran out of money to try to, or rather ran out of road in 2010 of going after white supremacists. Pretty much dismantled everything. So they had to look for new targets, a new cause, a new righteous cause. And so who did they go after? Christians. They went after Christian voices to stop us from preaching our traditional message. And they went after us to shut us up. The cancel culture was begun. And so the SPLC expanded its hate group list beyond violent actors to mainstream Christian conservative organizations. Many of them are on your radio, and you listen to them. I am one of them, especially those opposing groups like same-sex marriage and the LGBTQ policies and those who hold to traditional marriage views, man and woman for marriage, and that alone apparently made you an extremist and a hate monger, according to the SPLC. And so if you preached anything that was traditional, God's values and God's views, then you got on the list. Groups like the Family Research Council with Tony Perkins, Focus on the Family, just got put on there. Alliance Defending Freedom suddenly appeared alongside other groups like neo-Nazis. So now, if you have a Christian viewpoint, you're now a hate group. This led to the famous hate map that they began to publish and still publish today that now tracks hundreds of groups under categories like anti-LGBTQ, anti-Muslim, white nationalist, neo-Nazi, Ku Klux Klan, male supremacy, anti-immigrant, Christian identity, and more. Well, we were added around 2013. Fortress of Faith was singled out by the SPLC, and it wounded us very deeply. We almost went under as a result of this. We still are on that list, but yet no explanation on the SPLC site has ever been given. They never called me. They never asked us about our views to qualify what we stand for. We've never been interviewed by them. They just simply chose to list us without any evidence, without any explanation, that we are a hate group. And once you're on that hate group list, it must be official. I mean, the old saying goes, doesn't it? If there's smoke, there's fire. There's a reason. There's got to be something there. That Tom Wallace, he's a mean, miserable, nasty man of some kind, or maybe there's some kind of organization they're attached to. They're white supremacists, they're far right, they're whatever. And we've had all kinds of calls. We've had it, we've heard it. I'm thankful to some radio stations. I'm thankful to the radio station in Bellingham, Washington, here a few years back that had me on for a whole hour. And, they were doing a big expose on the fact that they got a hate group in Bellingham, Washington. Who are these people? Well, they come and talk to us. Well, we gladly did. They didn't preview any questions that was going to be asked. And I can't even remember the guy who interviewed me. But after an hour-long time on the program, they were left with the question, well, why are you on a hate list? It doesn't sound to us that Fortress of Faith is a hate group. And we're still scratching our head trying to figure that out ourselves. Labeling machine of the SPLC, the cancel culture, that's what their goal is. Here's what some of the people have said. Former leader Mark Patuk said openly, our aim in life is to destroy these groups, completely destroy them. How do they do that? They share their list with corporations, banks, and other charity platforms, tech platforms, leading them to deplatform, debank, and bring us to a financial death. To, run our donors away, to scare them, cause them to leave and have banks drop us. And that's what happened. We got a letter from the bank. To carry it around with me for a long time, and I'm still trying to find that letter. I wish I had took better care of that. I'm sure it's somewhere in a file. But basically, we do not serve your kind. We do not serve your kind, and so we were unceremoniously dropped. I mean, they just cut us off. Lost all my banking records, all my donor records, everything. Back then, we were a new ministry, but we were starting to reach up to about $350,000 in donations annually. When you're on national radio, that's still very small. We've always been a small potato ministry here, but we were syndicated, but man, we were cut off. I mean, overnight, bang, gone, lost. Now, internal scandals have hit the SPLC, but what the big thing is right now is that they're being indicted for fraud, for telling their donors that they are there to fight hate, but instead they've been funding it. They, instead of working and using the funds of their donors, which they get about $100 million a year in donations from their donors, they've amassed a great amount of wealth. Let me get to that here. They've got assets of nearly $800 million in assets, plus a $700 million endowment that's overseas. Annually, the revenue is $100 million in donations. Their CEOs and attorneys receive hundreds of thousands of dollars in annual pay. They're living it big over there as fighters of hate. But instead, what are they doing with these donations? They've been caught. They've been caught of funding the hate. In other words, creating the hate in order to legitimize to their donors, man, we've got to fight these people. Look what's going on. So let me give you an analogy. A fireman's job is to put out the fires, right? But if there's no fires to put out, his need seems to be pointless. And why are people going to fund the firemen? Why are we going to buy him a new fire truck? Why are we going to go spend all this kind of stuff? Because there doesn't seem to be enough fires out for them to go fight the fires. So what does he do? He goes and creates the fires. He becomes the arsonist. And the arsonist creates the fires to create the need of the firemen. So we need to fund the firemen. That's exactly what the SPLC has become, and they're getting caught. And so they're under investigation, federal investigation, and here just recently, a couple days ago, the House Judiciary Committee had a hearing on the Southern Poverty Law Center, and they titled it Manufacturing Hate. They're getting blistered and getting exposed for what they have become. They started out well, but they lost their way. But they got to keep the gravy boat floating and keep the merry-go-round rolling and keep the money running in. So what do? They go after anything that looks like that they could possibly label as a hate group and make it look like they're doing a service for the country to stamp out the wrong and the evil that is in our land, and therefore you'll want to support a holy mission like the Southern Poverty Law Center. Well, instead, they've turned out to be the villains themselves. Instead of the victors turned into villains. And they have taken innocent groups, like Christian groups, and have made them a great deal of hassle and problems. So, have there been efforts to try to sue them for their defamation of groups? Yes. But sadly, the laws of our land because of our freedom of speech, and I get it, and I'm happy for my freedom of speech. I'm glad for it. But because of that, there's a lot of leeway that's given to these people in the courts that they can do what they're doing and get away with it. Now, there was one successful case. It actually didn't go to court, but the Southern Poverty Law Center had listed a group as an anti-Muslim group, and they settled with them for being sued. And this gentleman in England actually was paid $3.3 million by the Southern Poverty, and they made a public apology. Very rare. There's been lots of efforts to try to sue them, to try to bring justice for the defamation that they've caused to organizations. But they've also done this. The Family Research Council, back in 2012, a man saw that the Family Research Council was on the list as a hate group there on the Southern Poverty Law, their list, their hate map. So he got his 9mm pistol and went into the headquarters in Washington, D.C. at the FRC and shot an unarmed security officer, Leonardo Johnson, in the left arm, and then proceeded to go upstairs. Johnson heroically tackled and subdued Corkin, despite being wounded, and prevented him from further violence. He saved the day, but the Southern Poverty Law Center hate list created hate and created an attempted murder. Well, folks, we need to stand for righteousness. We need to pray for God's people that the message of truth will ring out. There are great efforts to try to stop us. We appreciate your prayers, and we appreciate your support, because without it, we can't do what we do. Well, God bless you. We're going to be back with you again, Lord willing, next week at the Corner of Truth and Courage. God bless you.